I'm Natasha Kirchuk, and thanks for joining us from our studios in Israel. Coming up in today's newscast, Israel refuses to negotiate with a Palestinian unity government that involves Hamas. Russia promises to expand its buffer zone on the Israeli-Syrian border. And a new Israeli invention may save millions of lives. Stay tuned for the latest news in Israel. A Palestinian man has just been shot and wounded after he rushed at a group of IDF soldiers with a knife in his hands. No Israelis have been reported injured, and the attacker is currently being treated for his wounds in Hadas Hospital in Jerusalem. The would-be terror attack happened at the Gush Etzion junction in the West Bank, a common flashpoint for assaults like these. The army is reporting that the Palestinian attacker brandished a knife after rushing at some Israeli soldiers. They called him to stop, but when he didn't obey, they were forced to open fire. The attacker received shots to the stomach, and after the area was secured, ambulances rushed him to Israel's Hadassah Hospital in Jerusalem. He's now being treated for his wounds. Israel has been weighing its official response to the reconciliation deal reached between Hamas and the Palestinian Authority. And now Prime Minister Netanyahu has just given the final word that Israel will not negotiate with a Palestinian government backed by Hamas unless the terror organization completely transforms. This should come as no surprise, considering Hamas has the largest armed Palestinian army in the world, with 25,000 soldiers prepared to attack the Jewish state. So far, Hamas is refusing to dismantle its army as part of the reconciliation talks, though Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas is insisting that Hamas must give up its military for the deal to work. This has led many to worry that Hamas will become a Hezbollah-like independent military faction within the Palestinians. And it's why Israel is now refusing to recognize any new unity government unless it completely dismantles Hamas's army and all parties formally recognize Israel's right to exist. The Palestinians have already responded to the statement, stressing that it won't change anything in the forthcoming Hamas-Fatah talks nor deter a unity deal. For now, Israel is saying it will maintain security ties with the PA, but clearly there's a lot that needs to happen before true peace talks with the Palestinians can move ahead. Here with more on the new Palestinian Unity Agreement is the former Palestinian Minister of Prisoner Affairs. From 1984 to 1996, a whole 12 years, Ashraf Ajrami was in Israeli prisons, but today he has become an author and researcher who is pushing for peace. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
So, Israel has said that it will not work with a Palestinian Authority that includes a Hamas military. How likely is it that Hamas is going to lay down its weapons?
I think at the first stage, Hamas will keep its weapons aside without using it, without initiate any war or confrontation with the Israeli state. And after that, we can speak about disarming Hamas. But at the first stage, Hamas will engage in the Palestinian political leadership, and the decision of political issues or decision of military issues must be related to the Palestinian leader, the collective Palestinian leadership, without any kind of unilateral step that Hamas does.
What do you think it will take for Hamas to say that it recognizes the state of Israel? Is that something that could possibly happen?
I don't think that Hamas needs to recognize Israel at this moment. But Hamas changed its agenda or political program after accepting the establishing a Palestinian independent state on the 1967 borders, which means that Hamas accepted the two-state solution. This is a very significant step from Hamas movement, and this is like PLO in 1974 when adopted the partial program, and after that went ahead with the recognition of the Israeli state. We think that Hamas did a positive step. We must encourage Hamas to be integrated in the Palestinian leadership, and if Hamas will be committed to the PLO program, it means that Hamas accepted the recognition of Israel, like many Israeli parties now in the Israeli government, which didn't even recognize the Palestinian people or the PLO or even Oslo Accord, but they are committed to the
How likely do you think this unity government is going to impact the future of a Palestinian-Israeli peace deal? Are we going to see one as a result of this?
Nowadays, President Mahmoud Abbas can say to the Israelis that we are united and we have a unity government or unity leadership, and you can have a deal with us without any problem, that we also want to control everything in Gaza Strip like the West Bank.
Well, I guess, what we have to wait and see is whether or not this unity government will comply with the requests of the Israeli government to return the bodies of civilians, Israeli civilians and soldiers that are being held by Hamas, and to also recognize the state of Israel and lay down arms. So we're waiting to see if that happens. But my final question for you, if you could tell us quickly, because we're running out of time, is how is the Palestinian public reacting to this new unity government? Is it bringing hope? What would you say, given the fact that you live in Ramallah yourself?
Yes, the majority of the Palestinian people, I think even there is a consensus of the Palestinian people who wants to see this reconciliation succeeds. But until this moment, many agreements were signed between the two parties, but they didn't succeed. People hope to see it succeeds and to see unity of the Palestinian Authority and unity of the leadership, and to have hope also to have a peaceful agreement with Israel, an independent state, Palestinian state.
Well, I think the hope here in Israel is that this unity government will contribute, like you said, to a lasting peace. Thank you so much for joining us. Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu has just promised controversial new bypass roads for Jewish settlements in the West Bank this week. But now the government is proposing another massive upgrade by putting almost $1 billion into tightening security throughout the settlements. At 3.3 billion shekels, almost $1 billion, this is an unprecedented security package earmarked for settlements. The upgrade comes from Defense Minister Avigdor Lieberman's office, which is expected to collect the money from other Israeli ministries. This will greenlight everything from new cell towers to repaved roads and even smart fences with advanced sensors throughout all of Israel's settlement communities. Critics of the proposal see the move as yet another controversial government step to root the settlements deeper into private Palestinian land. But with violence inside settlers' gates spiking over the last few years, others see the massive security upgrade as a long-delayed measure in protecting Jewish lives. Prime Minister Netanyahu has become especially vocal recently over maintaining Israel's settlement project, and clearly the government is putting its money where its mouth is. Russia's defense minister has just made his first diplomatic visit to Israel yesterday, and it looks like he's given some very good news. We're hearing that Moscow has now agreed to expand a buffer zone along the Israeli-Syrian border, pushing Iran and Hezbollah off of Israel's back. This comes at a very, very crucial time for Israel and the entire Middle East, with Syria ravaged by both civil war and a conflict with ISIS. Both Iran and Hezbollah have managed to seep in through the cracks, gaining footholds right on Israel's border. This is a threat that Israel has seen coming for a while, which is why the government has repeatedly demanded a larger buffer zone, something Russia refused to do just 2 months ago. Until now, Russia has allowed Iranian and Hezbollah troops within 5 to 15 kilometers of Israeli soil, but now they've finally agreed to expand the zone an unspecified distance. With the Iran nuclear deal in limbo after President Trump's shocking reversal to decertify it, it remains increasingly unclear how the world will prevent Iran from developing nuclear weapons. But clearly, Iran is up to something. Their chief of staff is visiting Syria today to meet with President Assad less than 24 hours after Syrian troops toppled the ISIS capital within its borders. Iran has backed Assad since the beginning and even developed a private missile factory in southern Syria, which means Israel may need every inch of buffer it can get. Protests from the ultra-Orthodox community have been erupting all over the country in light of the latest court ruling that decided Haredim are no longer exempt from joining the Israeli army. In fact, just yesterday, another demonstration in the religious community of Bnei Brak just turned violent, and ILTV's Aaron Porras is with us now on the story. Now, Aaron, we're seeing a lot of police in Bnei Brak. What is happening?
Well, I mean, as you said, this is one of the more out-of-control protests. Upwards of 40 ultra-Orthodox Haredi men were arrested just yesterday during those demonstrations. People, Haredi and ultra-Orthodox members of that community have been up in arms ever since the High Court came out last month saying that the draft exemption was unconstitutional. And as you said, things have been ramping up and violence has been increasing at every protest. Just earlier this week, there was another protest with 8 arrests in Jerusalem, where protesters were blocking roads to the light rail, to the light rail line, and to the central bus station. Yeah. There were 2 different videos that started going viral. One of a female army officer trying to clear the road for cars and traffic. She was being spit on and harassed and crowded. Felt very threatened. There was another situation. A guy, he said, "Don't make me pull out my gun. Who wants a bullet?" So it's very tense.
Things are really heating up. Now, where is the government now on the Haredi draft? Is there a time-specific reason that the Haredi community is protesting right now?
I think they're gearing up for a long fight. After the court's decision, the Knesset now has just a year to come up with a new deal in this fix-it-or-nix-it fashion, right, as Prime Minister Netanyahu has said famously, that where the problem is to come up with a solution that appeases all the sides. And to do that is going to be really difficult, which I'll explain right now in my report.
All right.
Protests have been ramping up against the court's recent decision to reverse the ultra-Orthodox's exemption from army service, especially this week, with demonstrations over the past few days turning violent, resulting in police making arrests and even drawing their guns. Now, 40 Haredi protesters have just been arrested in the ultra-Orthodox city of Bnei Brak after 2 yeshiva students were arrested for refusing to report to the IDF's draft offices. Police are reporting the arrests were necessary as protesters were, quote, blocking roads and causing public disturbances, end quote. This is what's happening in Jerusalem just a few days ago as well, where police made 8 arrests in order to break up the mob blocking the city's light rail train. Israel's High Court of Justice reversed Israel's controversial exemption of ultra-Orthodox from army service, a move that some saw as a step towards equality, but others saw it as a religious infringement. Traditionally, Orthodox men and women have been exempted from military service so that they can pursue families and religious studies, while secular Jewish men and women are both conscripted at 18 years old, serving between 2.5 and 3 years. The court has now given the government just 1 year to address the issue, which will certainly be a difficult task considering how heated the topic has been and continues to be within the country.
A new bill has just been introduced to the Knesset that would permanently shut down NGOs promoting the BDS boycott of Israel. The law would also ban any organizations that take aim at the IDF, including the anti-occupation group Breaking the Silence, and it's backed by Prime Minister Netanyahu. Breaking the silence has been controversial within Israeli society. The group claims to gather testimonies from former IDF soldiers who say they witnessed Israel committing war crimes in the occupied territories, often sparking international media attention. Citing anti-Israel bias, the government has been ramping up legislation against NGOs like Breaking the Silence recently, but this new law would be the harshest of all. It would also ban any groups that promote the BDS boycott of Israel, extending to boycotts against the settlements as well. It's been rumored that Netanyahu has specifically targeted Breaking the Silence since at least earlier this year when he appointed the Minister of Tourism to crack down on left-wing groups. It's already mid-October, which means Halloween is just around the corner. Well, one American costume website is receiving intense backlash after a URL of one of their Halloween costumes featured the words Anne Frank. ILTV's Emmanuel Kadosh is here to give us the details now. Emmanuel?
Hi, Natasha. Well, it's been reported that HalloweenCostumes.com, an American website that sells Halloween costumes for kids, had a costume that featured on their site an outfit of Anne Frank. Now, Anne Frank was a German-born Jewish girl who became one of the most influential victims of the Holocaust thanks to her diary. While hiding in the Netherlands between the years of 1942 and 1944, Frank was betrayed and later handed over to the Nazis. Meanwhile, her diary was found and published and would turn out to be one of the most heavily examined historical sources of that time period.
In fact, Anne Frank's diary has truly become a staple of American Holocaust education. I remember reading it when I was in school myself. But her tragic story seems like a very strange thing to try to recreate in a Halloween costume.
Most definitely. The costume can be seen on multiple social media screenshots after being taken down. Featured a long-sleeve blue button-up dress, a brown shoulder bag, and a green beret. The website, which actually also delivers to Israel, labeled and advertised the costume as World War II costumes for girls, along with the URL that reads Girls Anne Frank costume. No matter how much you twist and turn it, there's no denying the fact that this costume was intended to be an Anne Frank Halloween costume, regardless of the company's description of Anne Frank as a World War II hero and inspiration, adding that they can always learn from the struggles of history. And in my opinion, this is a scandal we should definitely learn from and never do again.
Absolutely. Now, how did the reps for HalloweenCostume.com respond to this negative backlash?
Well, the company's spokesman, Ross Walker-Smith, apologized in a tweet for any offense the costume may have caused. He goes on to discuss the fact that the site itself sells more than just Halloween costumes, also for school, projects, and plays, and that this costume in particular was not intended to offend. Meanwhile, the regional director of the Anti-Defamation League in Arizona, Carlos Galindo Elvira, said in a tweet that there are better ways to commemorate Anne Frank, and this is not one of them.
And she's definitely, he's definitely right on that, and hopefully the site has learned their lesson for now. We are just thankful that they took the costume down and that hopefully no one does something like this in the future. Thanks for joining us, Emmanuel. All right, speaking of the aftermath of the Holocaust, there's a movie that I just cannot wait to see. Filming is now underway in Argentina for Operation Finale. For the first time in history, Hollywood is going to be retelling the story of the Israeli Mossad operation that captured Adolf Eichmann, the architect of the Holocaust. And get this, Oscar-winning actor Sir Ben Kingsley will be playing the role of Eichmann. That's right, the star of Schindler's List is taking on one of history's most infamous Nazi villains.
Sure to be a powerhouse blockbuster next year, Operation Finale follows the Mossad team that hunted down and ultimately captured Eichmann after the war. Eichmann was one of Nazi Germany's top officers, the man who carried out and conceived Hitler's horrific final solution that ultimately murdered 6 million Jews. The new Hollywood film will track the agents who found and finally captured Eichmann while he was hiding out in Argentina. Kingsley will star alongside Oscar Isaac and Melanie Laurent, though casting directors have also been scouring Israeli actors for roles as well. Fauda star Lior Raz landed a supporting role in the film, and who knows, maybe filming will even find its way to Israel. The Mossad smuggled Eichmann out of Argentina and brought him to trial in Israel in 1961, where a panel of Jewish judges delivered Israel's first and only death sentence.
Most people think of major population hubs hubs like Tel Aviv and Jerusalem when they think of Israel. Well, one incredible organization is trying to change that, and joining us now in this studio to tell us more is Hadas Goldman, the co-founder of the Tarbut movement. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So what is the Tarbut movement? What is it doing? How did it get started?
So I'll start just by telling my own story, because I think that sort of encompasses all of the motivation that we had. I went to an arts school, studied theater and art, and I went into the theater world and the art world here in Tel Aviv, Jerusalem. And I came to see that there's so much richness and success here in Tel Aviv and in the central areas of Israel, but that these types of cultural and artistic endeavors aren't reaching the rest of the population in Israel, that are sort of outside of these very central urban areas.
Absolutely.
And so when I finished my service here in Israel with a bunch of my friends that were all very motivated, young, aspiring artists, we decided to pack our bags and move to a city called Afula, which I don't know if anyone, if you know it or anyone knows it.
Yeah, I know of Afula. Yeah, it's a small town.
It's a small town, about an hour and a half from Tel Aviv, which doesn't seem very far, but in terms of Israel, it's very far. And we settled there and started living there and working through art with the community and using education to encompass and to really bring in artistic tools to use with the population that we started living in.
Absolutely. And Tarbut, tell us what Tarbut means in Hebrew.
So Tarbut means culture.
Culture,
So
exactly.
culture for us really deals with community, education, art, and brings all of that together.
So Tarbut movement is culture movement.
Right.
Now, you said that this is, you were working in Afula. Have you been working in other cities as well with the movement?
Yes. So about 12 years ago, when we started this organization, we were 6 people, part of the founding group. And today we have over 500 artists that are spread out between Kiryat Shmona, up north near the Lebanon border.
The most north you can get.
Exactly. And Ofakim, down south in the Negev. So we have 500 artists in these different artistic communities, theater, dance, filmmakers, musicians, every type of art you can imagine, that are really embedded in these low-income communities all over the country.
This is really interesting. So, I mean, what kind of programs or activities are held within these different communities? You said it's low-income communities for the most part. How are they able to kind of bring this cultural movement to these communities?
So we do it two main methods. One is education. So all of our artists are also certified teachers. So they go into schools and actually start art departments and teach young teenagers and young children who wouldn't have access to the arts and arts education if we weren't there. So that's one thing in schools and also after school activities. And the second thing is community building, is using art and culture to open up galleries and theaters and other venues, festivals like you can see here in all of these videos, and all of these activities that are that really bring together a community and sort of weave back the social fabric of these communities.
Well,
that we
I mean,
live
I
in.
think people forget how important, art is for our communities, art education. It's something that's not considered a necessity, but I personally believe that it is. Listen, I think you guys are doing something that's amazing, and I think we're all rooting for future success. Thank you so much for joining us and telling us about this.
Thank you for having me.
All right, well, this next story is going to completely blow you away. We've all seen the crazy things you can do with a 3D printer, but now an Israeli startup might have just cracked a way to print actual body tissues and even entire life-saving organs. Check this out. The Israeli-based startup CollPlant is about to change the world with a truly astonishing medical breakthrough. The company has just filed a patent for completely organic ink for 3D printers made of collagen. Collagen is a protein found throughout the body, and CollPlant developed ink from it by fusing human genes with tobacco plants. The result? An engineered plant that makes a type of collagen that can bond with human tissue. But the company didn't stop there. CollPlant pushed the idea even further by developing a collagen-based ink intended to work in advanced 3D printers. Their goal is to print fully formed human organs completely from scratch: hearts, livers, kidneys, and lungs. At least 20 Americans die every day waiting for a life-saving organ transplant, which means this could be the breakthrough millions have been praying for.
Enroll in eTeacher's online Hebrew courses and quickly discover that it creates the deepest connection to Israel that you could ever imagine.
And now for our Hebrew word of the day, retailers like HalloweenCostumes.com aren't the only ones that are capable of committing major social faux pas. Now, unfortunately, we all share that wonderful gift for horrendously embarrassing ourselves. So today's word is fashla, meaning a blunder or screw up. Now, as I've said, we've all been guilty of fashlot or screw-ups before. Maybe for you it was an attack of acute foot and mouth syndrome, or maybe you tried manscaping for the first time and ended up without eyebrows. That would be a pretty big fashla. Just remember, the next time you commit a fashla, if nobody is around to see it, it totally didn't happen. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the weather forecast. Tonight will be clear with a low of 68 or 20 degrees Celsius. Tomorrow is expected to remain clear with a high of 89 or 21 degrees Celsius. All right, that's it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.51 shekels to the American dollar. Remember to sign up for our daily newsletter at iltv.tv. I'm Natasha Kirchuk, and thanks for watching.